On 5 News, guilty. The man who murdered his rich fiancée for her money. Ian Stewart was engaged to successful author Helen Bailey the moment he was arrested for killing her, caught on camera.
I'm arresting you on the suspicion of the murder of Helen Bailey.
Are you joking?
Officers finally found her body in a cesspit under the garage. She might have still been alive when she was put into it. And police say they're now looking again at the death of Stewart's previous partner. Also tonight, more failures by social services that have cost a child her life. 18-month-old Keegan Downer, who was murdered by her guardian, had become almost invisible to the authorities. Britain's first female top police chief, Cressida Dick, is the new head of Scotland Yard. And the dresses that made Diana, a second outing for the outfits that were fit for a princess. Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Sian Williams. They had been brought together by grief after he had lost his wife and she had lost her husband. But while the best-selling author Helen Bailey was planning her wedding to Ian Stewart, he was plotting to murder her for her multi-million-pound fortune. Today, Stewart was found guilty of drugging and suffocating Helen before throwing her body in a cesspit, along with that of her beloved dog. And now police are investigating the death of his wife 6 years ago. Here's Dominic Reynolds.
Okay, we've got a warrant to search the address.
Police filmed the moment they arrested Ian Stewart. It appears he can't believe it.
I'm arresting you on the suspicion of the murder of Helen Bailey.
Are you joking?
And there's a good reason his next thought is about his garage.
Is that why the garage door's open?
His well-known fiancée had been missing for 3 months. But just hours before that arrest, police had started to dig under the couple's garage. They'd opened up the hidden cesspit and they'd found the bodies of Helen and her dog inside. Ian Stewart murdered his successful fiancée in order to live off her wealth.
It's a very challenging inquiry, initially reported as a missing person. The lies and deceit that Mr. Stewart offered during the course of our investigation really did hamper us.
My name's Helen Bailey and I'd like to introduce you to my new book, which is called When Bad Things Happen in Good Bikinis.
Helen Bailey's final book was about grief, diaries of how she coped with her husband's death. It was in an online support forum that she met and fell for Ian Stewart. In 2013, they moved into a house she had bought them. In 2015, she changed her will to include him. And a few months later, she vanished.
Please, how can I help?
Hello there. My partner has been missing since Monday.
This is the call Stewart made to police reporting Helen missing 4 days after he'd killed her.
Said she was going away, hasn't ended up where she said she was going. So we just decided we should report it.
But in truth, on the day she disappeared, he was getting rid of a duvet at the dump. After drugging her with these sleeping pills, he'd smothered her to death.
Have you had any new visitors?
Police recorded 3 interviews with Ian Stewart at home. At this point, they just wanted his help to find Helen. He didn't seem very interested.
Obviously, you're telling us you're hungry. We ideally probably would like to do another interview with you.
Another one?
My experience of people who report their loved ones as missing is they're very demanding, and they should be demanding of the police. They want to know what we're doing to try and find the person that they love. Well, Ian Stewart never did that. He was very difficult to deal with. He was obstructive. He didn't really want to tell us a great deal. He complained when he was feeling hungry or tired.
This is the 7-bed, £1.3 million house where Helen Bailey lived with Ian Stewart. Helen's brother John told the jury that when he first got a tour of the house from Helen, she joked that the cesspit under the garage was a good place to hide a body. And that remark proved eerily accurate. Several police searches of the house led nowhere. Enter neighbour Mavis Drake.
They weren't searching the garage for the well, and we thought we must point it out.
She knows a lot about the house she's lived beside for 50 years. And the day after she mentioned to police the pit under the garage, they uncovered it.
I can understand them missing it, because you don't expect to find a cesspit on top of a well inside a garage.
Did you kill Helen Bailey?
Once he was arrested, Stewart went silent.
because this could be your last opportunity to speak to the police about this. You are here on suspicion of murder. You need to tell us what happened.
After saying nothing for 6 months, in December, Ian Stewart unveiled his explanation. Ian Stewart blamed everything on Nick and Joe, business associates of Helen's late husband, who he said murdered her, buried her, and then tried to get hold of her money. But Ian Stewart had invented Nick and Joe, and the prosecution said his story was ludicrous. At his trial, the jury saw detailed digital images of the house and the cesspit, and they were told Helen and her dog may still have been alive when they were buried in it. Those details were painful for Helen's friends. Shelley Whitehead was initially Helen's bereavement counsellor. She's now grieving for her.
It's no more. And it's so hard to come to terms with that, to get your head around that a beautiful life with so much to give, so much to offer, and so much living to do is no more.
There he is. You can see that he does exist.
With her dachshund Boris at her side and a new fiancé, Helen Bailey had emerged from grief to make a new start. The author's own story was ended by the new character in her life, and a crime that looks like a horrifying fiction made real.
Well, Dom was in court today. What was the reaction, Dom? I'm afraid we were hoping to speak to him, but he's obviously gone, so hopefully we can talk to him a little bit later. Just to let you know, you can see more on the investigation into Helen Bailey's killer, including an exclusive interview with the couple's cleaner. It's on our Facebook page. You search for C5 News. And tomorrow night, there's a special programme on the story. It's called Murdered by My Fiancé, and it's at 10 o'clock here on Channel 5. The former Prime Minister Tony Blair has defended his government's decision to help free a British man from Guantanamo Bay in 2004 who went on to commit a suicide bombing on behalf of so-called Islamic State in Iraq. Jamal al-Harith, originally known as Ronald Fiddler, reportedly received £1 million in compensation after his release. Mr Blair insists that payment was authorised by the Conservatives in 2010. A convicted murderer is on the run after escaping from prison guards in Liverpool. Sean Walmsley fled after two armed men ambushed the car he was travelling in during an escorted hospital visit. The Mayor of Liverpool has called for an immediate inquiry into the escape. It all sounds so tragically familiar. A vulnerable child, a violent carer, failures to spot the signs of abuse, leaving a young life cut short. As a serious case review into the death of 18-month-old Keegan Downer was read out today, the scale of the appalling pain she suffered was distressing. Her legal guardian, a distant relative, inflicted more than 150 injuries on her. But why, again, wasn't more done to protect a child? Peter Lane reports.
Oh, yeah! Failed by the system designed to protect her, Keegan was just 18 months old when she was murdered by her legal guardian, Candice Downer, a distant member of her extended family. This is part of the 999 call she made as she tried to cover her tracks.
Oh, keep calm for me. Chest is rising, but nothing's happening. Okay. No, I don't know. I think she's opening her eyes. I don't know.
A review says adequate checks on Keegan's progress didn't happen, and concerns raised that Candice Downer was only interested in the money she'd earn as her carer were ignored. But its authors say the death itself couldn't have been predicted.
The needs and the wants of the carer, Candice, were dominating over the concerns for the child. And of course, we now know the outcome of that. It's absolutely awful. It was a truly horrific case.
The review highlights flawed and incomplete assessment of Candice Downer. It says once her guardianship began, Keegan was almost invisible to professionals, and that with more professional involvement, the assaults inflicted might have been prevented. After other high-profile care cases like the deaths of Kyra Ishak and Keanu Williams, this is more criticism of Birmingham Council, who are already planning to move their children's services to an outside trust.
Our viewers watching this will think, here we go again, a child failed, opportunities missed, a lack of communication, that phrase, lessons to be learned. How many cases do we need before lessons are finally learned?
We've changed our policies. We've changed the support we put in place after we place a child on a special guardianship order. I deeply regret the death or harm to any child. That's why it's really important that what we do is apply the changes that we have got to make, particularly in an area like Birmingham, which has had a history of continuing to be unsafe for children. And that's why we are making... That's an
understatement, though, isn't it?
That's why we are making...
record.
That's why we have made the changes. We are still inadequate in safeguarding children, but we are a council beginning to show those improvements.
Oh, yeah!
As a result of Keegan's death, the council says its guardianship system is now more robust and that national guidelines have improved as well, a legacy for a young life lost. Peter Lane, 5 News.
A woman has landed the top job in UK policing for the first time. Cressida Dick has been named the new Metropolitan Police Commissioner. She's the first female to lead the force in its 188-year history. Let's talk to Julian Drucker, who joins us from outside Scotland Yard. Julian, just tell us who is Cressida Dick and what kind of challenges she's going to face in this new role.
Yes, Sian, Britain's top police officer is a woman. She got the job after a very short selection process involving the Mayor of London and the Home Secretary, and Cressida Dick was unveiled here just a few moments ago. She was flanked by the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd. She spoke here and she told us of her pleasure at getting this new job.
I could not be more pleased to be appointed as the Commissioner. It's beyond my wildest dreams, an extraordinary privilege. I am very humbled.
Now, Cressida Dick was a former acting Deputy Commissioner here at the Met. Controversially, she was in charge of that botched operation just 2 weeks after the London bombings in 2005. That was when John Charles de Menezes, a Brazilian electrician living in South London, was shot dead by armed police. They mistook him for a suicide bomber. Now, Cressida Dick was exonerated. A jury later found that she wasn't culpable, but the family of Mr. de Menezes have said that her application for this job should have been blocked. They have yet to comment on the fact that she now has that top job here.
Julian, thank you. Coming up on 5 News.
Uber slave labour must stop.
How Uber, the company that revolutionised the taxi industry, is facing a revolt of its own. And the outfits that made Diana, remembering the shy princess who became a fashion icon. We'll see you after the break. Hello and welcome back. You're watching 5 News. It's called the gig economy, the 5 million people who are employed on short-term contracts or gigs as a delivery driver, for example, as opposed to having a permanent job. Some say it offers flexibility. To others, it's a form of exploitation. Today, some of the gig economy bosses were brought before MPs to ask why they weren't offering better protection to their workers. Catherine Jones reports.
At a business conference this morning, protesters hijacked the stall belonging to Uber, the phone app that matches minicab drivers to customers.
Uber slave labour must stop.
The focus of their anger, the fact that Uber does not employ its drivers, so they don't get workers' rights.
I feel humiliated. I feel like I'm a slave.
These people are not looking after properly.
Uber forms part of the so-called gig economy, where firms don't take on permanent staff, instead contracting people to complete short tasks. Other examples include Deliveroo, which has riders who drop meals off to customers.
We get paid 65p per parcel.
While Hermes and Amazon use couriers to deliver packages. Today, MPs called them all in for a grilling.
When are you going to start paying people properly when they're doing on a regular basis something that's approaching full time?
So for an individual that's working 30 to 40 hours, they still have a significant degree of flexibility.
It's not about flexibility.
It's about your duties. I understand.
I would assert that if you ask the vast majority of couriers, that their position would be that they value the flexibility that comes with the self-employed courier model.
Across the UK, 5 million people now work like this, self-employed, setting their own hours, being their own boss.
It's always good when people are in work, but our standards should be much higher than just having people in work. We need to be thinking about the quality of work that they're doing and ensuring that the jobs which are being made available comply with the basic things that we think people deserve to have.
James Farrer recently took on Uber over holiday pay and won. He says people shouldn't have to give up rights for flexibility.
I enjoy the flexibility. That's why I and many others work for Uber. But I don't want to be exploited either. Even if just because it's flexible hours doesn't mean that those hours should come at less than minimum wage.
We can see your greedy side.
Short-term casual work does suit many people, but not getting any sick pay, pension or job security adds up to an uncertain way to live. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
The widower of Jo Cox, the MP who was murdered by an extremist last year, is planning to mark the anniversary of her death with one of the biggest celebrations in Britain since the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. Brendan Cox says he wants to take on the hatred that killed his wife outside her constituency near Leeds by bringing all communities together in a massive street party in June. He's been talking to Simon Weiger.
That's not what I said.
They are cooking up a plan for the summer, for the biggest national party since the Diamond Jubilee. And the main organiser is the husband of Jo Cox.
She would love it. I'm not sure I'd want to taste her cooking. Jo is not the finest chef, but she would absolutely be sort of front and centre of this in terms of the organising. There's nothing that she liked more than doing that. Should have been the life and soul of the party, and it will be lovely to think about her and how much she would have enjoyed it. Just that sense of actually talking about what we have in common rather than spending all of our time talking about what divides us.
So Mr. Whippy special. We're doing quite nicely here. The great get-together got some royal backing today. It'll be on the weekend of the 17th and 18th of June, 1 year on from the murder of Jo Cox. At the centre of this are Jo and Brendan's children. Culin and Layla took part in events to mark their mother's birthday last summer, and they'll be at the great get-together too. Amid all the positivity, there is, of course, a profound loss.
It's very hard to explain why it happened. I think they understand what happened, but their question of why did somebody do this is a very hard one to answer. But they are as good as they can be. I'm spending a lot of time just making sure that they are as good as they possibly can be. We've got a very close family, so that helps a lot. They've got a lot of Jo spirit in them, so they're very strong. But obviously what has happened will have an impact on their lives for the rest of their lives.
But for the anniversary, it's all about celebration.
Drink a toast to the big lunch and the great get-together, and may it go from strength to strength. And I also know, well, I hope that wherever Jo is now, she'll be looking down proudly, seeing what a wonderful job you were doing.
Thank you very much.
The National Party is focused on Jo Cox's firm belief that what unites us is far stronger than what divides us. Simon Weiger, 5 News.
Now, she was a woman who touched the lives of millions and changed an industry forever. When young Diana Spencer emerged into the spotlight, she was a shy teenage nursery worker who was initially deeply uncomfortable in front of the camera. Didn't last long. She blossomed into a confident, independent woman with a very strong sense of her own style. Now, a new exhibition of the outfits that she made famous is celebrating that style 20 years after her death. Just a warning that Tessa Chapman's report does contain flashing images.
She was the most photographed woman in the world. From her earliest days in the public eye, people weren't just interested in what she did, but what Diana wore. This new exhibition charts her changing style. Each of the 25 dresses and outfits here has been carefully chosen to tell a different part of the story of Diana's fashion journey, as she went from demure teenager to sophisticated fashion icon. Curators have picked outfits that tap into a public memory. The silk velvet dress by Victor Edelstein, worn by Diana as she danced with John Travolta at the White House. The white Catherine Walker gown that became known as the Elvis dress. Diana grew to understand the power of her public image.
She was treading a line between high fashion and tradition. She presented herself as a sort of glamorous Hollywood-style icon when the moment was right, but at the same time wore business suits for charity work that were really stylish, and her look and sense of style was widely imitated around the world.
Paul Costello designed outfits for Diana during the 80s. like this one she wore in the rain in Hyde Park, meeting Pavarotti. She was, Paul recalls, a joy to dress.
She had great shoulders, she had a slim waist, she had hips. You know, she was the typical 80s girl. But she had confidence, she knew she was beautiful, and but she carried it out in a very modest way.
The fashion world remembers Diana as a woman who knew what she liked, who became willing to take fashion risks, and whose style is still very much admired. Tessa Chapman, 5 News, Kensington Palace.
And more of Diana in her most memorable outfits on our Facebook page. Search for C5 News. And more as well on Tonight with Matt and 5 News Tonight. Hello.
That's right, Sean. It doesn't end there. We're going to have much more on the Diana exhibition at 6:30. I'm going to be chatting, in fact, to the designer behind some of her most recognisable dresses, Jacques Azaguri, including this black one that she wore just a couple of weeks before her death 20 years ago. Also, NASA is due to make an announcement in the next half an hour about a major discovery beyond our solar system, to infinity and beyond at 6:30.
That's
Sean.
exciting. Thank you. Look forward to that, Matt. That is it for us, though. Chris Page has the weather for you next. I'll see you again tomorrow at 5. Matt, of course, back at 6:30. Thanks for watching tonight. Bye for now.